Hello everybody, my name is Chef Ruben. I am one of the culinary instructors here at South Texas College. So this right here is some of the ingredients to our biscuits. All right. Some of the dry ingredients we have are our flour. We're going to use our pastry flour. We have quite a bit of baking powder, some sugar, and some salt. Right. First thing you want to do is bring all your dry ingredients together. All right. I got my flour. I got my baking powder. I have my sugar. And I have my salt. Oh, there it goes. Let me make sure I get all of it out. All right. These right here are going to be all my dry ingredients. I'm going to give them a nice little mix just to make sure that everything gets nice and mixed in. All right. Now I'm going to go in to adding my butter. All right. In order for you to get a nice flaky biscuit, you want your fat to be as cold as possible, right? So I actually have some butter, and I actually have it in the freezer, right? Doesn't get much colder than that. A little tool that I like to cheat with, right? Cheese grater, right? Just to make it nice and easy, right? Frozen butter, go into the larger holes as far as the cheese grater goes. And then I'm just going to grate the butter in here. All right. Now we're on to another step, right? Get everything nice and covered. All right. My goal for this butter is to have it nice and flat and possibly a little wide, right? Without having to kind of mess with it quite a bit, I like to kind of go in there and just make a fist, really nice and hard, right? Go in there a few times, make a quick little fist, and then just let it go, all right? Hopefully what's happening, right, is, let's see if we can get nice and close on here, right? The pieces of butter are gonna get nice, flat, and wide, right? They're gonna kind of resemble a little piece of like a cornflake. All right, so that right there is what I want to go for. I want to get the butter nice and flat, but I also want to keep in mind that if I handle it too much, my butter is going to start melting, and I don't want my butter to start melting just yet. Okay. So once it looks like I got a lot of pieces that are nice and thin and flat, now I'm going to move into my liquid. All right. Again, all right, so I have some buttermilk that I had in the freezer just to make sure that it stayed nice and cold. So that buttermilk is going to go in there. Buttermilk is going to give you a really nice acidity. It's going to give you a really, really nice acidity. And that is going to be very appreciated in your biscuits. Right. I'm going to give them a quick little mix just by hand or just with the spoon just to get everything started. I'm going to finish it off on my table. And then while these are going, we're also going to make some gravy. All right. Once it starts coming together, you don't really see too much liquid. Everything looks fairly dry. It's going to be time to switch over to handling it. I'm going to get the edges cleaned, and I'm just going to kind of fold it over and kind of flatten it out. All right. Don't want to create too much gluten Gluten is going to make our biscuits tough, and it's going to happen if you handle your biscuits too much. So I don't necessarily want to knead. I want to kind of just go underneath, fold it over, and then press it down. Right? Fold it over and then press it down. Right? Once it starts coming together a little bit, I'm going to get it out of this bowl and get it right onto my table. Okay. What I'm also doing as far as folding it over and pressing it down is I'm starting to build those layers. Right? It's starting to come together. So I'm going to put it off to the side. I'm going to add a little bit of flour to my work surface just to make sure it doesn't stick. All right. And that's where my biscuits are going to go down. All right. And then I'm going to kind of do the same process. Right? Flatten it out. And then I'm going to start doing two things right here. I'm going to flatten it out and fold it over so I can, like I said, continue building those layers. I'm going to add a little bit of flour to the top just to make sure it doesn't stick to my hands or minimize how it sticks to my hands. All right. So I'm developing some gluten so it can stay together, but I don't want too much that it's going to get tough. All right. Fold it over, give it a little twist. All right. I can put some of that stuff there on top. All right. And go to flatten it out. All right. Every time I flatten it out and fold it over, it's going to get a little more united. Right? The dough right now kind of looks like a little bit of a shaggy mess. But as I fold it over and flatten it out, it's going to come together a little more. Right? The folding over and flattening it out is also going to allow me to square my dough. Right? It's starting to kind of square out a little bit. And this is going to be really, really nice when I go to cut them. Because I personally appreciate a square biscuit. All right? Some people that are against square biscuits, I'm not one of them. I appreciate a square biscuit. All right? So I'm going to probably do it a few more folds because they're starting to come together. I try to keep a little bit of flour between me and the actual dough. Because like I said, last thing I want to do is overheat it. Right? All right, it looks like my dough's starting to come together. So this right here is going to be the shape that I need. If it's starting to come together, if your butter is getting a little too cold, you can always use a rolling pin, right? Just make sure that if you use the rolling pin, you don't go too aggressive with it, kind of going back and forth like crazy, going back and forth like this. You're going to be developing gluten, and you're also going to be developing a little bit of friction, right? Try to get the dried bits off of your rolling pin, and then try to apply nice equal pressure to roll out, roll in, up, getting stuck to the bottom. Let me cheat, and I'm going to grab a little bit of a metal spatula. You can also use a straight edge, a ruler, a knife. All right. Give it a little bit of a rotation. And I want to make sure that these biscuits are nice and uniform as far as their width, as far as how thick they are. All right. Now that I get here, I want to take something nice and sharp, and I want to square this off. Squaring it off, I want to kind of cut off some of that excess flour on the end. right? That's gonna do two things. It's gonna give me a nice squared biscuit, definitely. But another thing that it's gonna do, and probably what I appreciate more, is it's gonna open those edges. Let's see if we can zoom in really close to this right here. All right, this is one of our scraps. Look at those layers. See? Those layers look nice. And that's what I want. I want those layers to be exposed and be able to rise really, really nicely. Right? So I'm going to get it nice and squared off. And these scraps are not trash. That right there is what you get to taste. Right? Those are little taste testers. All right? I'll put these aside, put them on a plate, and I'll eat them too. Right? This right here is going to be your dough. Get them nice and uniform size. Let me see. I want big biscuits today, right? So I'm going to do nice, a little bit bigger biscuits, right? I want to cut them and just square them off. Right. Right. Great thing about biscuits also is that they freeze extremely well. I'm going to bring this over to the freezer. I have some already in here, which I'm going to show you what they look like. Biscuits I made earlier, nice and frozen, ready to go into the oven. All right, and like I said, you should be able to see those layers. Look at that. On all sides, those layers are exposed. So these biscuits are ready to rise, and rise they will. Right? A little tip, if you want to add a little bit of color to your biscuit when it goes into the oven, you can add a little bit of fat. Right? Something like a dairy. Right? That's a really, really good option. Whether it be milk, whether it be cream, whether it be a little bit of buttermilk. In this case, I'm going to use a little bit of buttermilk. And I'm going to add some buttermilk on half, and then I'm not going to put any buttermilk on the other half. Just so at the end we can kind of see a little difference and see why we would want to use it or not use it. Right? The little bit of proteins, the little bit of sugars that are in this buttermilk should give me a little bit more color, and it should give me a little bit nicer finish. All right, so I'll do some of them with the buttermilk and some without, so like that we can kind of see the difference between the two. There we go. Half has buttermilk, half doesn't. All right. This is going to go into the oven, and they are going to be delicious. So those are my ingredients. Nice and simple. We're going to start off with a little fat, right? Again, fat of choice for me happens to be butter. Right? Get a little butter into that pan. And to that, I'm going to be adding my breakfast sausage. Right? This is some breakfast sausage that one of our classes made. Right? In our advanced food prep class, they actually broke down some pork butts into cubes, ground it, and created breakfast sausage. Right? So I'm going to take a little bit of that breakfast sausage and brown it in our butter. To that, I'm gonna add a little bit of flour, right? It's about 1/3 of a cup of just all-purpose flour. And that's gonna get together with the breakfast sausage and the butter, and it's gonna form what's called a roux, right? A roux is gonna be something that's gonna allow us to thicken, right? What's it gonna thicken? It's going to thicken our milk, right? That's gonna turn our milk and breakfast sausage into one thing, which is gonna be our sausage gravy, okay? So now I'm gonna head over here to the cooktop with all my ingredients, and I am gonna start with my butter, right? Butter's gonna go in and start melting. I don't want it to be too hot, especially not at first, because I don't want my butter to start burning. All right. I just want it to start melting, the pan to start heating up. All right. Once I start getting the pan melting and heating up, I'm gonna add I was about to say Italian sausage, my breakfast sausage. All right. Breakfast sausage is gonna go down once I have a good amount of fat in there melting, and it's gonna make sure that my breakfast sausage doesn't stick to the pan. It's gonna give some flavor to my breakfast sausage, and it is also going to help with the browning. All right. So now that I got the breakfast sausage in here, I can turn the heat up a little bit, and I can start breaking everything down. All right. I'm gonna break everything down, let it go a little bit, try to break everything down a little bit more, but I definitely want to get a little bit of browning, all right? Brown food tastes good, all right? If you are here, right, about the time that the food starts browning is almost about the time that you start smelling it, all right? It produces a whole lot of flavor compounds, which makes everything great, all right? So I'm gonna let that go for a little bit, break everything down before I add the flour, right? As this cooks, you might be able to see into the pan, it is gonna release a little bit of juice, right? That little juice is gonna have to kind of get evaporated before the meat starts browning. So the meat's about a good size now, so I'm just gonna let it sit there for a little bit. So now I'm gonna lower the heat a little bit because I'm gonna add my flour, right? The flour that I add in here, I'm gonna mix it up. It's going to combine with the fat, which was the butter, right? Which is the fat from the breakfast sausage, right? And it's going to create what's called a roux, right? That's going to help us thicken our sauce, right? Turn it into a gravy. It's going to take our milk and get it nice and thick, right? I want to stir it for a little bit. Don't want it to burn, but I do want that starch to start to cook, right? It's going to help me not have a grainy flavor or a grainy texture at the end, and then it's also going to cook out that flour flavor, right? So now that everything is more or less where I want it to be, all the starch has gelatinized and cooked through, I'm gonna add my milk, all right? I'm gonna throw a little bit of milk in there, and I'm gonna stir everything up. I wanna make sure that that starch evenly gets distributed all around. All right. All right. There you go. Now I'm going to add the rest of it. Okay. Now what's going to happen here is I'm going to kick the heat up again, because now I have some milk in here, and I'm going to want it to bring it up to a simmer. And I'm going to want to let it sit at a simmer for a little bit. All right. This would be a great opportunity to add a little bit of pepper or a lot of bit of pepper. I'm a fan of a lot of bit of pepper. So we'll guess we'll put that much on there. All right. I'm going to kind of move it around from time to time. just to make sure that I don't have anything burn. Right? Sometimes the milk has a tendency to scald at the very bottom, and that is definitely not my my goal. All right. I'm gonna add just a quick little pinch or two of salt. All right. Just because I know it's gonna need some, but I don't wanna add too much until the very end. All right. The breakfast sausage tends to have a good amount of sodium, so I wanna make sure that I don't add too much. It's very easy to add more salt, not so easy to take away once you already put it in there. Okay. I'm gonna take a look at my biscuits. They are looking really, really nice. I'm gonna let them go for a few more minutes. All right. Oh, look at that, you can see them through the window. A little peek at them. All right, and I am going to pull out my biscuits. Biscuits are coming out. All right. And if you do an overhead view on our biscuits, you should be able to see, right, difference between one side that had the buttermilk on top of them and the other side that didn't, right? And like I said, it just gives you a little more brown, right? Doesn't make a huge difference, but it's gonna give you a little bit of brown. But look at that. Look at those layers, all right? Those layers are beautiful. All right. And like I said, great thing about this recipe is that you can take those biscuits straight from the freezer. Right. First thing I do is I put them on a sheet pan, give them their little bit of space, and freeze them individually. Right. Once they get frozen individually, I can put them in a little Ziploc bag, and I don't have to worry about them sticking to each other. And then I can just put them in the freezer. Right. And pull them out as I want, right? If I just want to do one or two for breakfast, just for me, I can do out one or two, right? If I have a few more people and I want to do 3, 4, a dozen, then I can bring those out, right? So I like the recipe. It's a little bit bigger. It probably makes, depending on the size of biscuits that you want, it probably makes a good, I don't know, 14 large biscuits, somewhere around 20 small biscuits, 24 small biscuits. But like I said, the great thing is that you can pull it out and cook as many as you want, and the rest will be in the fridge. You make your biscuits once, and you can enjoy them on multiple occasions. All right. My product is starting to thicken up now. All right. It has a little bit more body. You can see as it cooks. I want it to go a good 3 minutes when it's simmering. That's going to make sure that it thickens up as much as it can. Right? Once it gets to the thickness that you want, the consistency that you want, how it's going to kind of cover your biscuit, we're going to cut it off, we're going to taste it, and we're going to adjust our seasonings. All right? This right here is getting very close. There we go. I'm gonna cut our heat. All right, and I'm gonna give it a taste. Just an FYI, this gravy has thickened up a bit and it is extremely hot. So please taste it carefully. Don't just grab a spoonful and throw it right on your tongue. That's making me happy. I'm just gonna finish off the little bit of pepper. All right. So it looks like it's seasoned wonderfully. And put this over to the side. biscuits. I'm gonna make biscuits, and I'm gonna add a little bit of gravy. All right. So I'm gonna crack a couple of the. I'll crack one. All right. I'm gonna get that right there. Now I'm gonna start showing off a little bit. All right. Because I get to have biscuits and gravy, and just an FYI, it is something that I've been craving for quite a while. So I was just like, what should I make? What should I demo? This is what was in my heart. So this is what I went with. Just in time. All right. Some biscuits and gravy. All right. That's right. See, I'm gonna get a little greedy. All right. Where's the eggs? Wasn't that your job? Ah. All right. So now I get to taste it. I'm telling you. Oh, and it's still gonna be hot. I'm gonna burn my tongue, and I don't even care. Oh, that makes me happy. That makes me very happy. All right. Okay. So I got distracted by the biscuits. Right. They were calling me. So this right here was our biscuits and gravy. It is a super tasty recipe. It's not that difficult, right? Making your biscuits, there's a few steps that you want to keep in mind, right? Don't overwork your dough. It's going to give you a tough biscuit. Keep your butter cold. It's going to give you a whole lot of layers. As far as your gravy, your flour, make sure you cook it completely before you move on. Get it to the desired thickness, and then adjust your seasoning accordingly.